could be a little bit rough. So what I'll do is I'll just slide the rail back and forth with a little downward pressure.
Yeah.
That in effect polishes the tops of the ties and the bottom of the rails.
Right.
Makes it a little less likely to catch. So we're going to have to put a small shim there just to keep this guy from moving forward. That's the only weak spot in this system. If the wire is sort of pushing this way, it'll inch the throw bar back. The other trick is to just twist the throw wire, and I may do that yet too.
I see. Okay. Here I have a question. I was looking at the frogs, and
a rivet.
Yeah. And the guardrails, and I see quite solid pieces of solder in there. How did you approach building that part?
Well, what I like to do is I'll put one of the stock rails in right through. I'll put the other stock rail in right through. Now this is whether I'm building a stub switch or a point switch.
Right.
If I'm drilling a point switch, I have to remember to file down the sides of these rails so the throw rails will slide into them.
Yes.
But we don't need to do that now.
Like a notch.
Yeah. So once that's done, I like to take two more rails and slide them in till they come together. Now I use track gauges here and here, and I just keep sliding these in until they come together. Alright? At that point I file the ends of the rails like this so that they come together in a nice point.
Yeah.
Alright? Once that's done, I get my track gauge out and I check the gauge here and I check the gauge down here and make sure that it's okay. Then I'll cut these rails. Now I know where I want this guy, so I deliberately cut it a little bit longer to give myself a little play. And I just brought it in, I bent it here, again using the track gauge and my test truck. I'm making sure I have all my clearances, and I lightly spiked this all in. I did the same here, lightly spiked it in, checked it all with the track gauge, and where I need to do some realigning or a little bit of cutting, I did that. Alright. Then I drilled a hole through here and slid in my feeder wire for the frog. And at the same time I drilled holes here for my two track feeders to the other 2 points on the switch machine. Then put the guardrails in, and again using the track gauge. So the track gauge has these flange points, so you want to have those in like that. Alright, so your rail is clear here and you have sufficient clearage here. Now in some cases I make it a little bigger.
Yep.
That way, because not all wheel sets are the same. Not all locomotive drivers are the same. Some are wider than others. So by making it a hair wider, you've sort of given yourself a little safety belt. The same again, just like that. And a little bit of soldering flux, and I fill this hole. Oh, the other thing I do is I like to shove a piece of wood under here and under here. That prevents solder from going all the way through to the road bed.
Right.
Alright. Then I fill it with solder, flush to the top of the rails, don't worry about it. Touch here and here. And then I take my persuasive tool, which is hiding on me. I take a broken, first off I take a mill file and I just go across like this to get any bumps of solder level with the rail. Then I take a broken hacksaw blade and I just start working through the frog and the guardrails like this. And I dig them down fairly deep. And then I take my track gauge and I use it to clean it up and make sure everything's at the right depth. I also use the track width gauge to make sure, you see there's a bit of solder stuck there. And this is strong enough that I can come in and peel out that little bit of solder. And the same again this way. And then you just keep testing it with the truck. If the truck stays on the track and flows through freely, you're good to go.
Ta-da.
And then you cut gaps here and here. You have to here, because these two rails will always be hot. Whatever the polarity is on this rail is the same polarity here.
Now you have a wire, you said, that comes through from the frog. How does that connect into the system?
Well, that connects into the frog wire will connect to this one.
Okay.
And the other two wires will connect here.
So that one is an unusual one, as it changes polarity when it's thrown.
Yeah, because it feeds the frog.
Right.
So what it does is it feeds the wire from here, or sorry, from the power from here into the frog.
Right.
But because the frog is one piece, you've got to be able to change the polarity without shorting out the whole layout.
Right.
So hence you just gap it all 4 places, and then there's no guesswork. And then these guys, of course, I put track feeders in there, and there's a couple there. You want to feed the track, particularly with DCC. You want to put enough track feeders in so that you know you're not going to have any electrical problems anywhere along the railroad.
Yeah.
So take the time, put the extra track feeders in. It's not going to kill you.
Right.
Yeah. And I use cheap old Bell telephone wire with that. Yeah. But
Thanks to Ma Bell.
Thanks to Ma Bell, yeah. That I've done on the layout, I've always put the road bed in with the rails on top. Then when it comes to building the trestle itself, I make a copy of the top of the trestle by using paper. These are unused OVAR video library forms. I'll just lay them like that, throw the rest on the floor. No need to be particular. To make it a little simpler, now what I do is I make a copy of the rail. Doesn't have to be 100% accurate, it just gives me an idea, makes it easier for me to see where the rail is.
So why are you building this template?
Well, this is to allow me where to put the bridge together. So I figure I'm going to make the bridge start about here and end about here. So let me get my bridge kit.
Yeah, it's over there.
Where is it?
It's over there.
Yeah.
You call it a bridge kit, but this is obviously a scratch-built piece of...
This is my bridge kit. Alright, I built this a long time ago, put it on the layout, but I didn't like it. It was a little bit too big for the scene.
Right.
So I built a smaller one, took this one out, and I've stored it for years.
Okay.
And just recently I said, break it up, it's taken up too much room. So what I'm going to do is rebuild it. So what I'm going to do is I'll take this to the shop, put it down the desk, and then I'll figure out where I want each bent.
Right.
I'm going to put them on about 14-foot centers.
I see.
Okay. And then I'm going to take each one of these bridge sections, which is basically like that.
Yes.
And then I'm going to lay them out on the template like that, and again like that, and I'm going to glue them together. Now where they need to be, I'll take one of my grinding tools and make them fit a little better.
Right.
But the idea now is to get the flow of the trestle through like this, and by figuring these out at 14-foot centers, when the deck is finished, it'll all be glued together as one piece, no rails.
Right.
I'll finish pulling the spikes that I have not pulled. So all this is in the shop, all nicely put together, This can be retired to the recycle box.
Yeah.
I'll come out here with a saw and cut here and here.
Right.
And disconnect all the rails.
So they're hanging in space.
So the rails will hang in space.
Okay.
Now I'll take my finished trestle.
Yeah.
See, it's about that long.
Yeah.
Pretty neat.
Yeah.
And I'll float it up like this under the rails. But in the meantime, I will have attached a piece of wood, a piece of 1x3 or something like that.
Yes.
From this point to this point, sitting on top of the rails.
On top of the rails. Okay.
So as I pull this up, the rails will get pushed against the piece of 1x3.
Right.
And I'll use a couple of clamps to hold the trestle base to the bottom of the rails like that.
Uh-huh.
So the whole trestle, the whole deck, will be suspended between these 2 points.
Right.
Now what I'll do, once that's done, I'll take the original bents,
Yeah.
which are too big,
Yeah.
but I will float them in like that under the trestle. So what I'm going to do is I'll take my small chop saw and I'll just cut the bents off where I think I want them.
Right.
I'll pull these diagonals off so I can reuse them. And I'll cut these off here and I'll pull the base up and attach it here. I'll probably have to shorten it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll relay these to match the new point. So I'll slide them underneath. Now they're not going to be long enough, but what I'll do is I'll slide blocks of wood underneath these guys, and that'll push the whole structure up. So the whole structure will become a new trestle. Now, the trestle is not very deep, but I have deliberately made this deeper to give myself a little room to play. So what I'm thinking is the trestle is going to come down like that. There may be a deep spot here, and then it'll go back up. So there'll be a small, low section of trestle bents here, and then it'll drop down. And there'll be a trestle bent every 14 feet. It won't take long to do once I start doing it. But once the deck is finished, then you just attach it here.
Yeah.
And slide your bents in.
Nice.
And I may do a little restaining before that. It looks a little pale. I'll probably, once I cut them and put them together, I'll probably restain them a bit.
Looking at the base of the trestle, this is something that you've scratch built and designed yourself?
It was scratch built based on the trestles being built at that time.
Right.
Yeah, so there's 6 12 by 18s, I believe those are.
Yeah.
They're immensely strong.
Yes.
They'll take the biggest of the narrow gauge engines. And there's 3 of them with spacers between them. You always want to make sure you have a spacer.
Uh-huh.
Because if you don't, water will get in there between the 2 timbers and it'll rot it out in no time flat.
I see.
So with an air spacer, that doesn't happen. And if you're building a straight trestle, they like to have, when you have 2 like this, they like to bridge the 2 of them with 1 timber.
Right.
Makes it even stronger. But if you have a curve, you can't do that. So you want to be able to twist them a bit like that.
Yep.
But these are all reusable. I'll just clean off this bit of crap. And away we go.
Huh. Nice.
Yeah, so it won't take long to do this once I get going. So once the deck is finished, lift it up and do the bents. And at the same time, I can do the fascia. Now, I will do the fascia before I take it downstairs.
Yes.
And I won't do any cutting here until I decide how I want to cut it. Which, am I going to come down this way? Am I going to come down more gradually and do that? When I decide what I'm going to do, because I'm winging it here. Yeah, I've got some photographs, but I don't have quite the right layout. So I'm just going with the flow, sort of speak.
There's supposed to be a trestle there, and there will be
Yeah,
one.
there's a trestle there, and there's a mill there. Actually, the mill wasn't working in 1940, but by railroad.
Yeah.
Well, that's it.
Cool.